Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, the show dedicated to helping you navigate successfully to and through your retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio are two financial advisors from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. We have the co-founder, Tim Kulhanek, and partner, Jeremy Gove. We've got a really great show for you today, kind of a mini series that we are doing, the Goldilocks series, if you will. It's all about getting things just right, and today we want you to get your tax situation just right. So we're really glad that you're joining us. Tim and Jeremy, this is going to be a fun series that we're doing.
Yeah, we're basically screenwriters now, right?
Look out Yellowstone, right?
I don't know when the awards shows are, but I expect to get some letters in the mail inviting me.
Well, fair enough. I know you read a lot of fairy tales to your little girls at home. And so I'm sure that played a part, right?
To the thinking I'm going to get an award.
I know. All right, wait, we digress. But the whole story of Goldilocks, I think our viewers are probably very familiar. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You know, things were either too big or too small. You wanted to get it just right. Well, did you know that that's the case for your taxes and most importantly, your potential tax bill in retirement? So we're calling this show today, Goldilocks and Your Three Tax Buckets. All right, so let's kick it off here. I mean, we have some statistics too to set up why this conversation needs to happen. This is from a study that came out in July of 2024 from the Investment Company Institute. And they found that Americans have invested over $13.5 trillion in various types of IRAs by the end of 2023. Now, over 90% of those dollars were in pre-tax or tax-deferred traditional IRAs. That does not even account or include the $11.3 trillion held in employer-sponsored plans like traditional 401ks. So this is the problem, guys, is that the majority of Americans' retirement savings is currently sitting in these tax-deferred accounts that you have not yet paid tax on. Well, this is the problem because we all know at this desk that's creating a ticking tax time bomb for so many people. So let's set the stage when we talk about these tax buckets. And of course, we don't want to have too much. We don't want to have too little. We want to get it just right. What is the right amount for each of these tax buckets?
Very, very important question. We're going to talk about that today. I think before we get to how much we should have in each of those buckets, we should just explain to our audience what those are. Because most people, this is a foreign concept because it's like, well, you know, I was just told that I got a better deal with my taxes if I put money in the retirement account at work. And then every, February, March, or April, my tax preparer said, hey, if you put more money into an IRA or an individual retirement account, you're going to save a little bit of money. Unfortunately, I think that was the government's way of convincing us to postpone the tax bill until a later date.
Which is in their best interest.
Because they can change the rules of the game mid-game.
Right.
So here's what I'm going to do. We've got a graphic we're going to show you folks. We're going to pull that up on the screen now. And I'm going to start with just the first bucket. We'll get to the second and the third as we go through the show today. So the taxable bucket is the first bucket. What is that? So you can see within the blue part of that bucket, and what fills that bucket up. It's your savings account, your checking account at the bank, your CDs, your brokerage account. Maybe you got some mutual funds that you set up years ago. How do you tell whether or not a specific account that you own is within that taxable bucket? Well, I'm going to give you some clues, okay? The first one is if you get a love letter every year from the bank, from the brokerage company, from the mutual fund company, and it has 1099 on it. It's called a 1099. That love letter is a dead giveaway that you have a taxable type of account because you pay tax on that money every single year. So we consider this to be the least efficient bucket that you have out of the three buckets because even if you make, let's say, 10%, oh, great. I had a good return this year in my mutual funds. But then at the end of the year, you have to pay 25%, let's say, federal plus state tax on that 10%. Did you really make 10%? No, you lost a quarter of it, so you made 7.5%, let's say, just in simple terms. And so the key here is you pay tax on that money every single year. Maybe it's a 1099 MISC, 1099 INT. It could be a consolidated 1099, which you would expect to receive from like a Schwab or a Vanguard or a Pershing or Fidelity, a lot of those big brokerage firms where it's kind of a combination of a 1099B, 1099 INT, and so on and so forth. The key is it's not an efficient way to build wealth because it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah. You mentioned these love letters, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks, it's like that, oh, yay, I made money and I don't want to have to pay tax on it, right? It's not so much when it comes to taxes. And so this taxable bucket, it's important to understand how to handle it properly. So Jeremy, what other things do you want to add to this conversation regarding this first bucket?
Well, so the taxable bucket is, it's a bucket that we want to have more of our safer investments, if we want to use that term. So we want to take more risk in buckets that have different tax consequences. So in a tax deferred bucket, a taxable bucket, we would have things like CDs potentially. We might have money that's in a money market account. So it'd be investments like that. And so just to kind of give you an example quickly, if I have a dollar and I double it 20 times, right? How much money would I have? So if you just to kind of walk you through this, it's 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8. So how much money would I have, Tim?
$20?
You did eat paint chips as a kid, didn't you?
Gosh.
I knew it. No, just kidding. You would have $1,048,576.
I was close.
You didn't carry the one.
I didn't.
So, but the point is, in this bucket, it is going to be taxed, right? And so we do want to have investments that are in there that are, maybe they're not as aggressively growing, but they're more liquid. They're available to us if we need them.
So, okay, so take that same dollar though, and what do you want to share about that
so take it
now?
a step further. That's if you didn't have to pay tax.
Right.
So you're getting triple compounding interest in Jeremy's example, right? Interest on your principal, interest on your interest, plus interest on the money you otherwise would have had to pay to Uncle Sam. What if it's in the taxable bucket? I already told our viewers, I said, this is the least efficient bucket. And I know some people are like, oh, no, because I'm not going to trade. Well, I'm sorry, but if you own mutual funds in your taxable bucket, they're trading for you and passing those taxes on to you. So Jeremy's example is what we call the magic doubling dollar. Take a dollar, double it 20 times, how much you come up with. Now, let's say I take that same dollar, double it 20 times, but at the end of every doubling, I take a 25% reduction for the tax bill, just on the gain, right? So 1 goes to 2, I take out a quarter, I've got $1.75, I double that. I take out a quarter of the gain, double that. Now, how much money do I have at the end of the 20th double?
$15.
See, he also suffered the same fate as it. A lot's changed since our childhood. But the reality is it's $72,570. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, how could that be? It's the power. That's why Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world.
Yes.
He who understands it gets it. He who doesn't pays it.
Yep.
We want to make sure that if you visualize those buckets that I put up on the screen earlier, the taxable, tax deferred, tax free, we want the most money. We're going to show you how to do this and how much should be there in that far right bucket, that tax-free bucket. In a rising tax rate environment, there's a mathematically ideal balance to have in those first 2 buckets. Everything else, any surplus should be shifted to the right-hand side, to the tax-free bucket. This is why. This is why, because it's not an efficient way to grow wealth.
Right. Well, it's interesting. So I know our viewers at home, if you're anything like me, I don't like doing math in my head. So I did the math before the show between those 2 examples. Okay. So the difference between the dollar compounding 20 times without the tax being taken out versus doing that same mathematical calculation, but to your point, taking out the 25% each time to account for the taxes. Here's the difference. A difference of $976,000 and some change there. That's a huge difference that really reinforces why you need to pay attention with your hard-earned money, not just to your asset allocation, which I think most folks are familiar with. And typically they hear asset allocation, they think about having a healthy mix of stocks and bonds within their portfolios. But you also need to pay attention to your asset location, and with that, the proper tax allocation. You want to have proper tax diversification throughout your full financial plan, which is why you need to have all 3 of these buckets.
Absolutely. I mean, if something, life's consistent inconsistencies. I could think of a million things that could potentially go wrong. I got to buy new tires. What's like $200 a tire now? New water heater. Oh, there's $1,400 installed. There's so many things to go where we have to have money in that taxable account. It's our emergency fund. It's our rainy day fund. It's our sleep well at night fund.
Right.
But it's still not a great way to build wealth. And again, the example I just gave, we call those phantom gains. When I was talking about that taxable account, I'll give you a real life example. I had people who, let's say it's set the stage, it's early 2023, and somebody's watched the show and they decide, I should, they're right. I can't get a second opinion from the person that gave me the first opinion. I should go and just have a second set of eyes, look over what I have going on, inspect what I'm expecting. So they did that. They came in and they said, Tim, I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's say they had $500,000. I just lost $100,000 in 2022 due to market volatility. 2022 was a tough year for the market, worst year for a calendar year return since 2008. S&P 500 was down about 18.1%. And so if you had, let's just use 20% just for easy math, yeah, your $500,000, it turned into $400,000. Yet, when I looked at their tax return and I looked at Schedule D specifically, I saw, they've got capital gains. Why are they paying tax on gains if they just lost $100,000? Now, I knew the answer to that question. They did not. And it's because they had the wrong type of asset and the wrong type of account. They had a high frequency trading mutual fund, so a mutual fund with high turnover inside of a tax inefficient bucket. So I think the invitation to all of you is, this individual that took action, again, they said it to me. They said, Tim, I watched your show, I listened to you on the radio, and finally I sat down with my wife and I said, look, we have three options. Either we keep going the way we're going and hope that this is right, or we try to figure this out on our own, which I'm not comfortable doing, or we go and we find somebody who already has landed the plane, that knows where to go. They can be the guide. They know when to jump. If you're the, Acapulco cliff divers, you have to make sure that you jump actually when the water's low, because that way when you hit the water, it's high enough that you're not going to hit the rocks. You need somebody who's traveled the path before. That's what we can be for you here at Stonebridge, and make sure that we fix some of these things so you have the right amounts of money in each of those buckets. We'll show you how to do that when we come in and when you come in and visit with one of our advisors.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. I know we've got a lot more to cover as we think about this Goldilocks example of not having too much, not having too little. You want to get it just right, especially from a tax perspective. But if this is resonating with you, maybe it's bringing up some questions, or you're thinking about your own situation and going, I never thought so much about my tax allocation or my asset location, and you want this review. This is why the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems would love to be able to meet with you and offer you this complimentary written financial plan. 866-256-7778 is the number to call, or you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected with them online as well. We'll be back with more here on the Retirement Compass right after this.
If you think about the average American consumer, we don't talk about financial topics very often. And so we spend a lot of time at Stonebridge doing educational seminars and different things that are free of charge. If you're not educated in a topic, how do you make educated decisions? When you're working with a client, you're sitting down with them, they're a little stressed out, but after you go through the process and you really take time to educate them on not only what we're doing for them, but why we're doing it, that really gives them peace of mind, and you can see the weight just kind of drops. And when they leave, I hear all the time,
I really should have done this years ago. But sometimes there's a fear that somebody might try to sell us something. If the things that I can provide, if you don't want, don't need, or can't use those, I've got some good news for you. We're not going to sell them to you. We are fulfilling our fiduciary duty of putting their interests ahead of our own.
Well, welcome back to the Retirement Compass, where today we are sharing with you the not so fairy tale of Goldilocks and the three tax buckets. We are talking today about the importance of understanding tax diversification for yourself and your full financial plan. And really at the end of the day, what we're talking about, guys, is how to create more tax efficiency throughout someone's full financial plan. So I know we're talking about the three buckets. We talked about the taxable bucket. Yeah. What is the second tax bucket?
So the second tax bucket is the tax deferred bucket. So what that means is it's money I'm putting away, but I haven't paid tax on it yet. So ultimately I end up with a partner in my account that's the IRS. And so I guess the ERISA Act started in 1974, and since then, Americans have been putting money into 401ks. Previous to that, a lot of the retirement accounts were defined benefit plans and stuff like that. It was basically the burden was put on top of the investor or the individual versus the company previous to that. And so the bottom line is we're putting money into a tax deferred bucket. So at some point when I start taking money out of that account, I'm going to start paying taxes on that.
Right.
And that's basically what that bucket is.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned having a partner, and typically when you enter a business relationship with someone, you have a contract. The terms are, you know, fully written out. Both parties are aware. The terms, if they're going to change, you have to put it in writing. But here's what's interesting is most people's IRAs, I've heard it said, are an IOU to the IRS. You have that silent partner who becomes not so silent the older you get, especially when you approach required minimum distribution age. And here's the interesting thing about this relationship. The government can change the rules at any point in time.
Yep.
And so that's what's so maddening for folks. I think, you know, a lot of people, the reason the majority of Americans have the bulk of their wealth saved up in these tax deferred accounts is we were all sold that this was a really good thing for us, right?
Yep.
You put the money in today, you get a tax break today, and then supposedly when you go to take the money out in retirement, you should be in a lower tax bracket. But because rules have changed, that's not always the case.
Yeah, 100%. So when I was doing a workshop here recently, a tax workshop, I asked people, I said, will you be in a lower tax bracket in retirement? And pretty much everyone said yeah. And I said, okay. Will you be contributing to your 401ks when you're retired? No. Okay. IRAs don't have earned income. Can't do that. Will you still have kids in the house? You get those child tax credits? No, not in retirement. Well,
hopefully not in retirement.
I mean, some famous actors, maybe football coaches, I don't know, but not many people.
Right.
Probably not going to get those child. Oh, what about your house, your mortgage interest deduction? Oh,
we paid off our house.
you paid off your house.
Yeah.
The number one deduction that people use on a Schedule A to itemize their deductions, mortgage interest deduction.
Yep.
So all the deductions, the exemptions, the credits, they're gone, right? So people all of a sudden, they're shocked to find out that, you know, they're actually paying at maybe as high of tax bracket into retirement.
Well, and if someone has a pension, that can jack it up as well. Social Security can be taxed, right? I mean, there's just a lot of different things that change that landscape in retirement.
Well, it's not near as intuitive as you would think it was, especially with Social Security when you start introducing these concepts like provisional income and the reality that once you're over a certain threshold, it's either 50% or 85%. It's also complicated.
Of your benefit that could be taxed.
It could be taxed.
Right.
So let's do this. Let's pull that graphic on the screen one more time. And I'm going to go through just some examples of what could be that tax deferred bucket. Now, the ERISA Act, like Jeremy said, 1974, this is a birthplace of the 401k. And so that's the main retirement planning tool today. Unfortunately, what they essentially did is they shifted the burden of retirement security from the employer, which was defined benefit plans, also known as a pension, which according to Wilson Towers Watson back in 1998, there's still about half of Fortune 500 companies that were offering those. Today, it's around 14% that are offering those to new hires. Many of them have either been completely terminated or frozen. And so now they've shifted the onus, the responsibility for retirement security squarely on the shoulders of the people who are probably least qualified to be in charge of that requirement. But to make matters worse, essentially what's happened here. So let's say that we have an operating agreement with Stonebridge Well Systems. And let's say that the way I designed the agreement was I said, look, I've got Jeremy, Jeff, Scott, and myself. I want you guys to do all the work. You guys take all the risk. You guys personally sign for all the loans. But once this thing, is a raging success and it's time to harvest the gains, so to speak, I want my cut. Oh, and by the way, I'll tell you at that point in time what my cut is.
Right.
Who's ready to go into business with Tim? Well, I'm sorry, but you've all already made that agreement. Because when you signed up for that 401k, you put money in that traditional IRA, that's essentially the agreement you have with the IRS. Now, we want to fix that for you, but the only way we can fix that is if you start by giving us a call to that number on the screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through a written income plan. It's a written financial plan, but it's going to include a tax analysis and a tax map. It's going to allow you to see your taxes in a way you've never seen them before. It's really difficult to understand taxes by looking at a tax return, because you look at all those forms and you're like, well, why do I have 57 different forms or 107 different forms? There's so many of them, and it's hard to understand why you have all those. With a tax map, we're going to simplify it. And we're going to say, look, you're here today, just like you're at the Gateway Mall, and you go to the little kiosk and it says, here, this is where you are, the red dot. Here's where you're going to be in the future. If you don't do anything, you just keep going the way you're going, here's how much your tax bill is going to increase if rates just stay the same. If rates go up, it's going to cost you this much more. And then we can start implementing solutions to fix it. But in that middle bucket, there is a mathematically ideal balance to have in there. If you don't have a pension and you're married, it's probably somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000. You don't want any more than that. in that bucket. Everything needs to be shifted. Everything over that, any surplus should be shifted. If you do have a pension, it's quite a bit less depending on how much your pension is. But again, we'll do the math for these folks when they come in and see us.
Yes, and I know when we come back, we're going to be talking about the third bucket, as well as providing a resource that previously was only available to existing clients of Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And we're so excited to be able to share it with you so that you can anticipate what your potential tax bill might be in retirement and what steps you can take even now to reduce it. So you're going to want to stay with us for that. Again, this is a great opportunity, though, for you to pick up the phone, call the number on the bottom of your screen, and schedule your time to come in and receive your very own complimentary written financial plan. And as Tim said, as part of that, you'll receive this full tax analysis for your situation as well. 866-256-7778. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
Our team is very unique, so we all have different gifts. You know, when you put it all together, it fits well.
Jeremy is definitely our most seasoned and fastest growing advisor we have. He's discerning, so he understands the way we want to do things at Stonebridge, to focus on the client and solving their problems, and that's really what he's passionate about.
I know Tim spends a lot of time making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed for his clients. And he's not just satisfied knowing the 30,000 foot view, he wants to get down in the weeds and know exactly how it works.
The things that you buy, the stocks, the bonds, the mutual funds, that really isn't that important to the client. What's important to the client is, what does this mean for me? And at the end of the day, what it means is they can sit back and listen to the music. You know that you've got a team, not just one person, but an entire team behind you that's taking care of those things, so you can focus on what's important. As Americans, we strive for better. From a better house, to a better career, to a better life for our children and grandchildren. Better has become the American way. When it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? Does it mean more income, a flexible lifestyle, better solutions? A better retirement begins with a financial plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. We are talking today about the tax buckets in your retirement. And we just set up before the break how the majority of Americans have the bulk of their wealth saved up in that tax deferred bucket, that money that has not yet had tax paid on it. This is a problem. People are sitting on a ticking tax time bomb. So what can folks do to protect themselves now that most of their retirement savings is probably sitting in that second bucket?
Well, so I think it's important to have a plan, like we always talk about, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the big things is prepaying your tax bill with the proper contributions. And so one of the things that we can, when we talk about that, we can look at, is there money that, as I'm retiring and my income is maybe lower than it was while I was working, is there money that I can shift over to a tax-free account? Mm-hmm. You know, are there things that we can do there? We want to make sure that we don't think of IRAs and 401ks as money that we're just going to put to get the tax deduction today, mm-hmm. because do we think taxes are going to be higher in the future, or are they going to be lower in the future? So the bottom line is we just want to have a plan with that. We actually did a calculation for a married couple, just using that as an example, a married couple filing jointly without pension income, okay, but they do have Social Security. We found that mathematically it would be ideal to have a balance, typically somewhere between $350,000 to $400,000 for that couple. Mm-hmm. And so any surplus over that amount should be shifted to the tax-free bucket, and we'll talk more about that here shortly. Mm-hmm. But this is where you had mentioned the tax calculator, or the asset that we provide to our clients, and we're making it available for people on the show. And so, yes, if you're at home and you're sitting there wondering, well, I've got $700,000 in my tax deferred bucket, how is that going to affect me? Mm-hmm. If you go to stonebridgetaxbill.com and you can actually type in the numbers, plug it all in, what do you expect to get for returns? What do you expect to pay? What tax rate do you expect to be in your retirement years? You can actually see what that actual tax bill will look like. Yes. And so it's stonebridgetaxbill.com, and that's a free tool. You'll get an emailed report. It's very easy to use. And so the other thing that we talk a lot about is using the tax code to your advantage. There was a report, let me read that really quick, from the Government Accountability Office in May of 2024. They stated that a whopping 82% of eligible 401k participants were unaware of all the options they had when taking money out of a 401k and of the resulting tax consequences. And that is surprising, because I have people in my office all the time that are getting ready to retire. They're about a year away, or maybe they are retiring this year.
Right.
And one of the things that they want to do is they want to pay off their house right away. So they want to take, maybe they have $100,000 left on their loan. They want to take it out of their 401k or their IRA to pay that off.
Right.
I just don't want to have that payment when I'm in retirement.
That's what they
That's what they're thinking. That's the goal. But that's not always the best plan, because you're going to create a huge tax bill.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's implications and tax consequences of doing those large withdrawals for sure. So again, we invite you to visit this site, stonebridgetaxbill.com, or you can click on that QR code. As Jeremy said, it'll take you to a brief landing page. There's no strings attached here. This is completely complimentary to you. You'll put in some basic information, including how much money you have saved up in tax deferred accounts. You can play around with the calculator, and then it will instantly show you the difference between the government's tax plan for you if you do nothing versus how much you could potentially save in taxes if you enact some of these tax saving strategies, and a more detailed report and analysis will be emailed to you as well. Which brings us to the third bucket, because this is the whole point, right? Helping folks move money from the taxed always, the sometimes taxed, to the taxed never again bucket. Yep. So talk about this third bucket.
Yeah, as we close, I think we'll bring that graphic back up on the TV screen for our viewers to see, and we'll talk about tax-free. So here's what I want to, here's the environment that I'm trying to create for all of our viewers. All of our clients, we've already done this for them. And you know, if this is something that you think makes sense for you, it'd be a pretty good reason to call. So you need to have, we know we need to diversify our income sources. We need to diversify our assets as far as our asset allocation. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your tax-free income sources. So you should have tax-free income from your Roth IRA contributions, your Roth 401k contributions, your converted Roth dollars. If you do this right, you get the right amount in those buckets. Your Social Security could be tax-free, and your RMDs could be tax-free. So there's 5 right there.
Wow.
If you think tax-free income is a better way of living in retirement and to stretch your dollars further, we can show you how to do it. Just give us a call today.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. This has been a really helpful conversation, and thank you for joining us. Again, that number to call to get your complimentary written financial plan, 866-256-7778. We know once you visit the Stonebridge Wealth Tax Bill Calculator, you're going to want to reach out and get that help. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Retirement Compass.